With a game as huge and as old as Team Fortress 2, you have to take a step back and consider just how much content has been created over its 16-year-long lifetime, from not only Valve, but by one of the largest and most dedicated online communities. If you're familiar with the term lost media, then I'm sure it won't come as a surprise to know that a vast amount of TF2 content is known to be lost or has been genuinely forgotten. But with the recent leaks concerning unreleased TF2 assets, I don't just mean unseen updates, such as the well-known TF2 beta builds. When I mean TF2 lost media, I'm talking about the obscure gems ranging years back that are only evidenced to exist through a fractured breadcrumb trail of footage, or the vague memories of long-time players. So today you can just about expect what I'll be covering. This is the hunt for the deepest pieces of TF2 lost media. Starting us off is a peculiar case of TF2 having crossed over the boundary that separates SFM with real-life media production. In early 2014, a media production company named Happy Little Guillotine Studio had the idea of creating a completely original TF2 web series that would feature a whole production process, including voice acting and potentially live-action casting. HLG were not strangers at producing high-quality media, as they have since been contracted by big names such as Warner Bros., Netflix, and MTV to create original live-action productions. So the creation of an SFM project based around Team Fortress 2 was slightly out of the usual production routine for the studio. The project was named Escape from Team Fortress, being funded by Machinima, who had a lot of experience contracting individuals as well as companies to create video game oriented media, especially animations and skits surrounding Team Fortress 2. It was to be a tedious process to create a TF2 SFM web series that would fit the style of an episodic television show, reminiscent of what people thought Valve and Adult Swim were doing back in 2012, when the rumours of an officially licensed TF2 cartoon were making the rounds. Of course, that only ended up being a commercial for a Venture Bros collaboration, so as far as HLG Studios knew, their soon-to-be TF2 show was a complete first. Escape from Team Fortress was planned to have 8 episodes, all revolving around a plot in which 3 friends named Gary, Simon, and Alyssa were to reunite for a game night, ending up transported into the world of TF2. Somewhere along the series, Alyssa would be captured, resulting in Gary and Simon teaming up with other people transported into the game, referred to as normies, to rescue Alyssa and somehow return to their normal lives. As well as the general plot synopsis, the IMDb page also contains a casting section, where we can spot very strange roles that were not referenced prior, such as Mental Gen being voiced by Yuri Baranovsky, the co-founder of HLG Studios. Production for this web series was extremely ambitious, with each episode being written, produced, and even voiced. However, only one episode was actually animated, before the series ran out of budget with Machinima refusing further funding. This is where the series has left off, with all 8 episodes being lost spare for a small trail of evidence we have that shows us the animation existed in the first place. We can confirm that Escape from Team Fortress was indeed in production during early 2014, as found Facebook posts from May of that year show multiple images of the production process, mainly voice acting, since we can see actors in recording booths, as well as producers and audio specialists. Later into the month, we can spot a very noticeable update post for the series, citing that the first episode is inching ever closer to completion. Contained within this post is a screenshot of said first episode, which up until more recent developments was the only existing visual media of the series that proved the animation itself did indeed exist. This image served as the basis for the whole spectrum of community speculation regarding the series for the better part of a couple years, until actual footage was uncovered, more on this in a minute. Sometime around 2016, Lost Media Wiki user F. Feathers was able to contact HLG Studios in hopes of retrieving information surrounding Escape from Team Fortress, as the IMDb page as well as the screenshot was the only evidence that pointed to the existence of the series. Upon contact, HLG Studios did indeed clarify that the budget had run out, leading to cancellation, and that a crowdfund may open if people wish to see the further 7 episodes. They also said that the first, fully completed episode may be released as a sort of community favour if people wished, but as far as we know, the crowdfund campaign along with the official release of the first episode never occurred. Now, the biggest discovery in the search for Escape from Team Fortress was a HLG Studios project reel that included small portions of the fully animated first episode, said to be uncovered by Lost Media Wiki user Martin ATHF sometime around 2017, as this was when the reel was added to the wiki page, although it may be slightly earlier. Regardless, this reel contains the most evidence of the web series so far, even up to this day, as this nearly 10 seconds worth of complete animation gives us an amazing perspective of what this series could have been. It should be noted before we look a little deeper, that this reel is composed entirely of live action projects that HLG Studios were producing at the time the first episode was completed, spare for the short segments where Escape from Team Fortress is presented. This further solidifies our ground that the studio's involvement with SFM and Machinima was a first and a highly ambitious project, but I beg to differ. Let's tear open this animation. To begin, we have exactly 8 scenes shown throughout the reel, each lasting from about a second to a second and a half each. They're all very dramatic, quick, and contain a lot of flashing colours and fast-paced action. Our first scene involves a spy character wearing a paper hat, acting particularly shocked at something, which I believe is this menacing looking shadow that appears to be an in-universe engineer. Since this spy is one of the 2 characters featured in the reel to consistently appear across all scenes, I can guess that he is either Gary or Simon according to the plot synopsis. The next scene features many different mercs and characters, all of which are on the red team. What's interesting about this scene is that it establishes a boundary between in-universe characters and those who have been transported into the game, seeing how our named characters are on the blue team with the mercs on red. Another interesting thing is the strange lineup we have going on here. The soldier in the foreground seems quite normal, giving off a friendly wave, while we have 3 heavy variants, one of which is a robot, a standard sniper and his female counterpart, a robotic pyro, a strange looking engineer, a standard scout, medic, and another crouching soldier with a bandage. This seems to me like HLG Studios were using TF2's large selection of customization options to actually develop characters out of the in-universe mercs, which would have been a particularly interesting thing to see unfold, albeit quite strange. The third scene involves a spy and a scout, which we have already assumed are the main characters, Gary and Simon, and their sudden, almost panic reaction to the TF2 universe. The scene has the 2 looking like they're defending themselves from the mercs, revolving the camera around a scared spy and an offensive scout. I'm not going to go out of my way to name these 2 who I think they'd be named, simply because my judgment on who is Gary and who is Simon just falls down to who I think would be who. Personally, I say that Spy is Gary and Scout is Simon, but for convenience sake, I'll just call them by their class names. Throughout the reel, and this scene in particular, Spy seems like the scaredy cat kind of character who is completely dumbfounded by what's happening to him, and Scout seems like the cautious but distinctly cocky type. We'll see this dynamic play out further in the coming scenes. Our fourth scene 100% confirms that our main characters are definitely trying to avoid the in-universe mercs, with Spy and Scout desperately trying to run away from a pursuing Red Scout, Soldier and Heavy. We can see my presumed personality of Spy basically confirm itself here, with his panic and clumsiness, tripping up as Scout is attempting to tell him something. What's interesting as well about this scene is the multiple blue team bodies scattered across the ground, which could mean that our main characters share the team with in-universe mercs, or that the entire team is composed of those from the real world. This could be a possibility, as the synopsis refers to other people being transported into the game. If this is the case, well, whether those people died for real is uncertain. The fifth scene has Red Scout hitting our main Scout over the head with a bat, after what appears to be some sort of cocky remark. Not really much to say about this scene other than it drives home the slapstick and comedic feeling this series has, as well as the fact our main Scout appears to be quite cocky to line up with his in-universe character. This could have been a major plot point, with our main characters slowly shaping into the ones they have taken the forms of in the TF2 universe. Now the sixth scene is interesting, as this is the first appearance of another neutral character on the same team as our main cast. Out of the listed names in the synopsis, I personally don't believe this sniper is Alice, as it's stated that Alice is kidnapped, so the series must revolve around that plot point somewhat. I think this sniper is another individual who was transported inside the game and had teamed up with Spy and Scout, Gary and Simon, in order to fight back against the mercs and progress the plot somehow. It proves an interesting story, a phenomenon of people being transported into TF2 that isn't just focused on our main cast of characters. The slap here could be some sort of slapstick joke or something a bit more emotional, although seeing this series so far, I doubt something like that would hold much weight. The seventh scene flashes past immediately, but is quite funny. It simply features Spy being blown to smithereens with a Demoman sticky bomb. It's obviously not our Spy's death scene, as this is the first episode after all. So this scene confirms our previous question about whether dying in universe means death in real life. Characters from the real world that die in this TF2 universe simply respawn like every other character. Relieving news, as earlier we'd seen multiple blue corpses laying on the ground. Would be funny though. And at last, the final scene simply shows Spy and Scout screaming at the top of their lungs. Typical movie trailer type stuff, nothing much else to really say, other than this scene is perhaps the least interesting out of all the scenes so far. Although it does say something for sure, and that's the fact this first episode is probably filled to the brim with all sorts of panicked dialogue, scared faces and confused characters. And that basically wraps up all of the notable evidence for Escape from Team Fortress as of this current date. because all the updates we've really received from HLG Studios in relation to the web series is this sneaky little Facebook post from 2019 that serves as some sort of advertisement, stating that sometimes we even make cartoons out of other people's cartoons, with a screenshot of the mercs we've already seen. If you'd ask me, I think the studio has long since forgotten this project, as I doubt their contract with Machinima has lasted this long, around 9 years from the start of production. Although it's definitely been cancelled by now and there's basically no chance of the series resuming production, the full animation for the first episode, as well as the production assets for the remaining 7 episodes, are still out there. These assets could include items such as storyboards, voice recordings, scripts, and other planning stuff that would really show what this series could have been. We're extremely lucky to have actual animated footage as well as screenshots for this show, and even confirmation from the producers that it exists in the first place. But for now, the first fully animated episode as well as the completed assets for the remaining season are still lost. As I said, there is a very low chance the series picks back up again, but here's hoping that the studio still possesses everything related to Escape from Team Fortress, and they'd be willing to release it in the future. A very mysterious entry coming from Valve themselves. A series of unreleased movie stills for official TF2 related content were found with working titles during an integral leak concerning valuable Valve assets many years ago. Here's a quick summary of how this unfolded. Before SFM was released to the public, it was only available to Valve in the production of their many different shorts, such as the Meet the Team series. This meant that the tool wasn't necessarily refined for a public release, in turn leaving many confidential future projects Valve had already begun in the files of the software. Around 2010, a beta build for TF2 was leaked to the public, of course carrying its own weight. However, alongside this leak was the SFM internal beta in question, 2 years before its planned release in 2012. This was the first time the public had a genuine look as to how Valve created their short films, but what had been found inside this software intrigued some even more, as people eventually found the hidden assets inside the files. Here are some of the most notable finds from the service of this leak. A full sheet of Polaroid images from several different TF2 short films, including the Polaroids from Meet the Sniper, Scout's drawings from Exploration Day, and pictures of Spy with Scout's mum from Meet the Spy. We also have some other Polaroids, including this strange collection of photorealistic images with the Spy's head superimposed over the top, along with Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster crossed out. These could have been Sniper's additional targets, which meant the Sniper had canonically killed mythical beings if this was included. As well as the Polaroids, we can also see the full collection of the Team Base Alert system, a cigarette machine, and a fully fledged Spy flower, presumably intended for Meet the Pyro. But perhaps the most intriguing discovery out of the SFM internal beta is a massive repository of working screenshots from official unreleased TF2 shorts. Contrary to the previous assets, these unreleased movie stills have gone widely unknown, with the only access I know being the Valve Archive repo, where they have been sorted into different folders under working titles. From what we have, we could attempt to piece together the story behind these extremely unfinished screenshots to come to some sort of conclusion. However, I'm sure it'll come as no surprise that the actual SFM animation or even the completed animation behind these 3 shorts are possibly lost. For now though, let's see what we can find. The first short is referred to as Cigarette Gag, and is the shortest out of the 3, consisting of just 8 still frames. Immediately from what we can see, it seems as if this short takes place all within the same location, in a fairly relaxed environment that also has a massive chain in the background for no reason. I'd guess this is some sort of red base. In the first frame we can spot Spy, Medic, Soldier, all fully animated, whereas Scout and Heavy in the background have been left as unmodified models. Of course, throughout these stills, we're going to see some of the intricacies behind their working screenshot, such as the camera name, the axis, the resolution, and the different properties up here on the right. Progressing through the short, we get a closer view of the Spy and a focus on his cigarette, with the Medic looking up at him with soulless white eyes. Spy appears to gesture something and accidentally drop his cigarette, where we can see just how far he's dropped it in the next 2 frames. We get a shot of Medic, leading into him aiming his syringe gun. If this shot was a little more complete, I'd imagine this shot would be of Medic somewhat shocked at the fact Spy dropped his cigarette, aiming his gun to quickly pin the cigarette to the wall, which we can see was the case with the final frame. What's interesting about this shot is the fact that it's so, well, short. Maybe a little too so, as even when we consider the fact it's heavily unfinished, I doubt there was even much more to be implemented surrounding this sort of joke. This makes me think this short could have been some sort of website video, or perhaps an ending scene from a Meet the Team video. Whatever the case, Cigarette Gag is the least telling out of the 3 unreleased movies, although it is interesting to think about Valve doing short skits with the mercs. Our second short is titled Demo Scene, but with each individual screenshot carrying the name sniper_scene. Of course, leave it to Valve to be as ambiguous as possible. However, the inclusion of Demo Man throughout the short leads me to believe demo in Demo Scene never meant demonstration. But regardless, let's press on. Demo Scene has about 25 stills, which is a significant jump from Cigarette Gag, definitely telling us that this short bears some more of a resemblance to an actual movie, rather than a small bumper. The first couple stills has Red Demo setting up a sticky trap, waiting for any enemies to come walking by. Suddenly, he turns around rather quickly, appearing to have heard something behind him. This is revealed to be Red Engineer, or what appears to be, peering around the corner to spy on Demo camping his bombs. The next few stills are quite confusing, as this short is so unfinished that the models don't even change skin based on the team of the character. But we see Engineer being shot with a syringe, plucking it out and acting rather confused. He suddenly realises that his disguise is gone. And this is what I meant, by the way, as this spy here is obviously meant to be an enemy blue spy that has been disguised. He looks up in confusion, then round to the side, seemingly scanning the area for the medic that just shot him. It's then that he gets pelted with even more syringes, with this shot perhaps showing Spy's face of horror as he's utterly confused as to who's shooting him. We get a reveal in the next still frame that the friendly red medic was hiding behind a resupply cabinet, supposedly where Spy couldn't see him. Medic then unleashes his final barrage of syringes, with an even more bewildered Spy wondering exactly how Medic managed to sneak up on him. He examines just how much damage is taken for a second in what appears to be a typical slapstick fashion, before we cut back to Demo unaware of the entire situation. Blue Spy comes running out, fleeing from the medic that just littered him with syringes, but he's apparently forgotten that Demo was outside the entire time, running straight into him. This causes him to stumble and fall down the stairs, where it's obvious to presume that the Demo blew him to complete smithereens. This Demo Scene movie appeared to be another early SFM project that had the blue team once again acting clumsy and falling victim to the hands of the red team. This was a prevalent running gag throughout basically every Meet the Team video, as well as every official TF2 SFM in general, with blue being the silly team that always fails, and red being the main characters of the movie. Personally, I really don't know how this project would have fit into the way Valve were making shorts at the time, as it's slightly too long to be a post-outro scene like the ones we can see in Meet the Spy or Meet the Medic. Instead, this project has an actual plot, albeit short, so I really don't know what Valve could have been doing with this format of SFM. Maybe it was a simple trial and error as to what worked, but a TF2 movie series consisting of silly shorts like these could have been in their scope for a while. Now, the final short is where the prospect of exactly what Valve were trying to do here really ramps up. This movie is crazy, and ups the action of the previous shorts by tenfold, with exactly 32 stills to try and piece together a story. We open with a red scout running down what looks to be a road, holding the blue intelligence briefcase with 10 soldiers on his trail. What's interesting here is the fact that not only does this short color the models accordingly, but these soldier models look to be robots, at least for me, but that could just be a side effect of the quality. The next few shots have Scout running further in a panic, obviously having just stolen the intel from the enemy team, switching to an upward shot where we can see just how alone he is, with these 10 soldiers right behind him. In the next still, completely out of nowhere, comes Red Medic with his medigun in tow, following Scout from above, hanging on what looks to be a helicopter ladder, evidenced by the short's name, Heli Rescue of course. Next is a close-up shot of the soldiers, which by now you can tell that they're just indeed unfinished standard models, and don't appear to be robots. Medic on the ladder is getting closer and closer to the ground, seemingly on the intercept course to try and mess with the soldiers and assist Scout somehow. He gets low enough to straight up kidnap one with his right arm, again still holding onto that ladder, leading into this badass close-up of Medic with a soldier under his arm and his medigun going through the ladder only supported by his fingers. The next still shows what he was planning here, firing both the enemy soldier's rocket launcher along with the medigun to simultaneously explode the pursuing soldiers and heal Scout in the process. You can see just how much damage this caused as the soldiers straight up vanish with one of them ragdolling right up into the sky. We cut back to Scout, where we can now clearly spot the helicopter Medic is riding on in the background. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this model is completely unique and not seen anywhere else in TF2, meaning that Valve had actually created original assets for this short. Medic continues to heal Scout as he flees from the remaining soldiers, apparently getting shot, evidenced here by these bullet or rocket trails, but healing it all back because of Medic's support from above. Maybe this still was a close-up shot of Scout's worried face, as he thought he was done for. Across the next few stills are multiple different angles of Scout's path and Medic up on the ladder, providing assistance, the same soldier still held under his arm. What happens next is action movie level of crazy, where Medic actually drops from the ladder and fires another rocket from his hostage soldier's rocket launcher, propelling the Scout at a dead end forward by Scout rocket jumping mid-air. What? Scout goes soaring into the sky and manages to grab a hold of the helicopter ladder just in time, securing the intelligence but leaving Medic behind, with this shot appearing to show Medic's face of relief as Scout flies off into the distance. This sort of thing from Valve isn't necessarily out of character, But something like this in a TF2 SFM is genuinely crazy. We have a whole action sequence of a helicopter assisting the mercs in a rescue operation, with medic firing rocket launchers and Scout literally jumping off of a rocket mid-air. Out of all the unreleased movie stills we've covered yet, this is the movie I'd probably want to see the most. It's so eccentric, and it's hard to actually find a reason that Valve would make this sort of thing, just like the shorts we've covered. Could it have been a series of movies featuring the mercs in all sorts of different scenarios, advertising, trailers, who knows? The questions that come with these unreleased SFMs continue to pile on top of one another, leaving us stumped as to what exactly Valve was planning here, with the real shame being that we're likely to never get any more information surrounding these shorts, let alone know if they were ever fully animated, as after all, they were a part of a major leak over 12 years ago. They could be written plans, storyboards, voice acting, other movie stills and even full animation files that we'll never see. Really unfortunate given just how out of left field these sort of SFMs were, coming from Valve. For now though, aside from this small collection of stills, proving the existence of these short films, the full prospect of what was made for these movies, as well as the actual hypothetical assets we discussed, will likely remain lost forever. The story of Golden Machine Gun is one that is particularly sad, with a community that seemed tough as nails seemingly vanishing from existence, along with all of the content they'd created to relax and have fun, in a rather heartbreaking way. I'm sure that many of you have played on a chill community server at least once, or have become a regular player of one, the type of servers when you can just hang out, be friendly with other people, play silly minigames, and especially grind achievements if you remember the old school servers. And Golden Machine Gun was a community server that fit this exact description. A small legion of dedicated regulars and friends banding together to just have fun on their favourite game. There was no true seriousness involved. This server was composed of good times and happy memories, and its history spans further back than I ever could have realised. But before I talk about the history of this server, its downfall, the eventual loss of everything contained within, and all the evidence we have left, let me first tell you exactly how I found out about this server. My friend Placeholder, who helped out with my previous video, has been a very long time player of TF2, so he's definitely been around to see servers come and go. He gave me a tip about this one server, one that he remembers vaguely, only being able to give me a recollection of the server's name for a start, its premise, and small scattered details. But what he does seem to insist is that the many people who played the server have fond memories of it, including himself, all of which associating this server, Golden Machine Gun, with easier and simpler times back then. So this tells us this server is old enough for people to have grown, matured and developed fun memories, and well, we can definitely prove this, as checking the Steam group shows us all sorts of comments from players reminiscing about the good times. So when exactly did Golden Machine Gun, this one server established in TF2's prime, exactly begin, and how bad was the fall, to the point where we can safely say we'll never see it again? Well, it's long, but here's how it started. At the beginning of October in 2008, a user named NoodleBoy347 had started a legend on the Steam forums, one consisting of a typical early internet rumour archetype of a legendary weapon only obtained through near impossible measures. This item was the Golden Machine Gun, usually pictured to be a reskin of Sniper's SMG that makes it fully gold with all sorts of shine. Of course, this was before MVM, Australian weapons, and even Australian gold paint, so this seemed like a big deal. Noodleboy explained that the only way to acquire the Golden Machine Gun was to obtain every single achievement in Team Fortress 2 at the time, which was around 364 achievements. Of course, with every nostalgic rumour, players were split on whether to believe it or not. Either way, the legend had spread across the forums big time, to the point where Noodleboy decided to create their very own group based around the legend. This Steam group, of course, titled Golden Machine Gun, was created exactly 11 days after the initial Steam forum post, and served as a hub for everything related to the story Noodleboy had created. Eventually, the community grew, expanding into a fully fledged community server dedicated, at least at the start, to farming achievements in hopes of obtaining the prophesized weapon of legend. The exact beginning for much of our remaining evidence of the Golden Machine Gun server resides in the official YouTube channel, which is thankfully still up and running, with every video available. However, this channel was created on May 17th, 2009, so the exact details behind what occurred between October 2008 and May 2009 within the Steam group and the community server itself are still a bit hazy. But since the YouTube channel has so many videos, thankfully we can document the group's history from here on out in much more detail. Let's go back right to the very first video from the group's channel. Weirdly, their first upload is a complete re-upload of Meet the Spy, with a whopping 2.2 million views. But what's strange about this apparent re-upload is the fact that it was published 2 days before the official video, with the description even stating it was the first video of Meet the Spy on YouTube. How Golden Machine Gun got access to this video is completely unknown, and it remains as the most viewed video on their channel despite being completely unrelated to the group and its server. After this video and its following HD re-upload however, the group shifted their focus towards more original TF2 content, with with the server's silly premise beginning to take shape. We got a few more unrelated videos simply showcasing fun items, quirks, and even scrapped weapons within TF2, such as this video showing off a replica of the Valve flamethrower if that ever existed, or this video demonstrating a fun game mode where scouts battle with Sandman balls. But the most important video out of these early uploads is this video here, titled Team Fortress 2 Massive Nom. Here we get our first full view of the community server alongside the first version of one of its maps, both of which are main pieces of media that have been completely lost from the group. This map and what it grew into is really where the group's creativity shined, as we'll see with the evolution of the server throughout the coming videos. As for Massive Nom itself, it's a classic 2009 video where people just eat sandwiches in a circle for 3.5 minutes straight. Of course, nothing out of the ordinary there. What follows this video is the beginning of Golden Machine Gun's true original content, most of which being recorded events and games from within the server. There are dozens upon dozens of these videos spanning from around 2009 to 2012, which I presume is when the group was in its prime. I can't go through and detail each individual video, but what I will do is detail how the map and the server took form into something quite special. The first video to be featured on the server again after a couple more miscellaneous showcases displays a significant change from Massive Nom a month prior, at least from the parts which we can see. This video is titled Boss Battle and shows yet another game mode where players pit against a manually controlled Antlion Guardian in what appears to be some sort of precursor to Saxon Hail. In Boss Battle, we can notice some big changes, such as the map switching to a more sunny skybox and lighting, as well as the textures getting brighter. This is the map design that subsequent Golden Machine Gun map versions took on almost like a trademark, with the bright scenery and white concrete walls being synonymous with the server. However, I'm left uncertain as to how many maps this group actually had. As we can see from the description, the map in Boss Battle is titled Chambers, while the one in Massive Nom is titled Tunnels. Nonetheless, Tunnels appears again only a handful of times, telling us that Golden Machine Gun preferred the design of their Chambers map over the alternative grayscale rainy design from Tunnels. This would eventually be very noticeable, as the design featured in Chambers took form as the key style for the group, and subsequent Chambers updates. We can see a very important change a couple uploads later, with a video titled Robin's Flaming Ubercharge. Again, it's another recording from a community event, this time taking place in what appears to be an updated Chambers, where we get the perspective of someone roleplaying as Robin Walker, with his extremely overpowered weapons. What's important here though is the introduction of several different key features that define Golden Machine Gun maps, and how they were designed from here on out. The biggest introduction is this particular arch, which is a staple of later versions that is almost like a signature for the group, coinciding with each new version they run on their servers. Another thing is this sign, of course welcoming people to the map, but specifying that random killing is forbidden, which is one detail I was told that the group were very big on. They actively promoted friendlies and good times, with no sudden deathmatch allowed. Later down the line, we get uploads featuring dumb, funny antics from several different members in the community. These include a redo of the Boss Battle game mode, this time with an overpowered spy, as well as further funny weapon showcases and strange mods. It seemed by now that Golden Machine Gun had decided that Chambers was to be their primary map, as the coming videos display big changes that add on increasingly large areas. On June 1st, 2010, an upload titled The Heavy Train was yet another wacky event where people were having a good time, but this video in particular signifies a key point in the history of Golden Machine Gun, alongside the evolution of their main map, where it's the first time we can see the update, which gave a basically completed form to their primary design. See these arches here? This area of Chambers was to be the main image for the Golden Machine Gun server from here on out, as many of the following videos take place in this main plaza. In the next upload on June 7th, 2010, we get a promo of the server, with a tour especially focusing on their magnum opus, Chambers. Here we can see the full impact of the map, as this video covers just about every area, with signs pointing to areas labelled the District, Colouring Book, Haunted Crypts and Deathmatch area. The camera also shows us the true size of the main plaza, with its 6 trademark golden grey arches. It was pretty big. Alongside Chambers, the video also shows off their alternate map Tunnels, which also appears to have been slightly updated. However, judging by the frequency in which Chambers is shown, it's no surprise that the group had long since pushed aside this map to their backup. Nothing of note is that apparent in the many uploads that follow, apart from a teaser for an apparent subscription to the server, something I believe was quite unheard of back then. Golden Machine Gun Premium, although this is just a footnote, as there isn't really anything with this that screams lost to me. Many community events were documented here, and as you'll discover in a minute, the heartbreak that fell upon this community following what happened gives these videos quite a bittersweet, nostalgic feeling for many. Before we get to the end of the server's life and the eventual loss of everything, let me just add that Golden Machine Gun did not seem to be like your average server. If any of you that are watching had played on the server before, and at the very least have forged some happy memories, I'm sure you'd agree. The creativity that shows within these videos, and the community that banded together to simply have fun is just something else. We had demonstration upon demonstration of insane mods, crazy community events, and people having a good time. There is so much here to reminisce about, and even I feel nostalgic for a server I'd never even played before. So if you have the time, check out Golden Machine Gun for a blast of the past. I'm sure it'll give you a good laugh. As the years went on, it appeared that the genuine content began to slow. The channel began to produce more generalized content, from both basic TF2 gameplay to actual previews of working titles I'd assume were developed by Noodleboy. All of this weight began to snowball into several videos that detailed the fall of Golden Machine Gun, and by fall, I mean a complete cease of all operations. It began on July 24, 2016, with a video titled The Golden Machine Gun Finale. From the get-go, we're told that this is the final event of the server, so there must be some sort of message beforehand that players were alerted of that signaled the final days of the group. This video is heartwarming, as we see players congregate for one last time on the server many of them grew up on. It's a 16-minute send-off that leaves the server on a good note, at least from what they knew at the time. The following upload on September 24, 2016 is a short 1-minute clip titled I Love the Whole World, and simply consists of a short montage showing off chambers, fun moments from within the group, and many aspects of Golden Machine Gun set to a song sung by different members of the community. It's a nice follow-up that puts a bow on the finale video well. So where is this sudden heartbreak I've been talking about? Well, 2 years later on November 15, 2018, there was one last upload on the channel, shocking quite a few. It seemed as if Noodleboy wanted to give one true final statement to his community, as the video contains all sorts of clips from throughout the channel's life, and a lengthy description which gives a lot of insight as to actually what led to the group's end. Noodleboy thanks everyone who was a part of Golden Machine Gun, and details their humble beginnings as a small achievement server. He goes on to really drive home the fact that this server is now in the past, saying that the community really exists now only as a memory, that they've all moved on to bigger places and matured as people. There is some monologue about the state of game development and how it's become oversaturated since TF2's release in 2007, but it's something he doesn't want to talk about too deeply. I can see that as one of the reasons for the server's shutdown, alongside Noodleboy simply growing up. But the one thing that ties this all together into one big heartbreaking message is the fact that Noodleboy states the servers can't come back, even if people want them to, as the home he lived in when the group was created burned down, signaling to me that the content has not only been lost forever, if the archives were stored there, but Noodleboy uses this fact as a means to wrap it all up for good. So even if he does have the archives, we're never seeing them again. With one final goodbye, this channel is left dormant. Not only has the community itself been lost to time, but the map, the assets, the mods, everything that came with the server itself has been completely lost. And due to the circumstances surrounding the creator of Golden Machine Gun, I don't think we're ever going to see anything from this server's surface again. Of course, we still have all the videos as memories and as evidence of the server's existence, so at least we're left with that. But one thing I've forgotten to mention is another main outlet for the group, their very young website. Now visiting this website nowadays turns up blank as to be expected, but with the use of the Wayback Machine we can get a good view of how this website looked throughout the years. There's nothing here to really know as to finding all of the assets that were lost, but a quick trip to the still archived extras page from early in the website's history does give us what looks like a lead, a link to an archive containing TF2 related downloads. Maybe it could be something. But we can only get so far in the archive page itself before the Wayback Machine runs out of archives, so close to the folders containing all of the assets. Even then, this page seemingly disappears later in the website's history, so if we could obtain these assets, items such as the later versions of Chambers would still be entirely lost. So, one way or another, it's a lose-lose situation. Golden Machine Gun was not just a community, or a map, or even a server. In the words of Noodleboy, the creator of the meme that started this whole thing, it was an adventure. In this server, people made memories that lasted a lifetime, memories that reminded them of their childhood. Again, this server was extremely old, but did last a very long time. As for the remnants of its existence, only videos and screenshots show us the history, as basically everything from the main 2 maps we know of, alongside models, sounds, materials, and everything else attributed to the server is completely lost to time. And to me, with Noodleboy's statement in his final video, unfortunately it seems Golden Machine Gun has been buried for good. Due to his wishes and the circumstances surrounding the server's shutdown, it's best if we leave it be. Our next entry is an interesting topic that actually contains multiple different pieces of media under one umbrella, all with distinct resolutions as to their current status. Once again, we'll be discussing official Valve media, but unlike the previous segment about Valve's unreleased TF2 short films, our topic in question will go over several different single pieces of media that were actually completed, and all wrap up nicely into one big discussion. Let's take a look. Back in 2014, the TF2 blog released a post on June 5th that talked about rejected weapons that Valve had tested and deemed just too silly or impractical to implement into a coming update. This update was the Love and War update, by the way, which was released just short of 2 weeks later on June 18th. We get 4 subheadings detailing the weapons in question, which describe outlandish ideas that not even Valve could see working, such as a vacuum for the pyro named the Sucker, and a demo sticky bomb replacement called the Big Bomb that would just straight up shoot one massive explosion. Of course, you can see why these weapons were rejected without even reading the description, with the only weapon mentioned in this post actually having been implemented being the base jumper. But one specific subheading stands out, being the only one to actually feature video evidence of the discussed weapon. This was the segment for a weapon named the face stab knife, with Valve even saying that they were confident the idea was terrible before they even tried to make it. Through the name, I'm sure you can guess what this weapon was. Apparently Valve had been given the question of what if there was a knife that was almost useless from the back, but could backstab from the front, and compiled their playtest into a video to give the reader some actual video evidence for just how crazy this idea had been, instead of just going into too much worded detail. However, as you can see, this video has since been listed as private, so where do we go from here? Of course, it's a given that we're never going to obtain the lost weapons mentioned in this blog post, since Love and War was nearly 9 years ago. So the fact that they were indeed created for playtests and have since gone unspoken of does technically count them as lost. But that's not what we're here to discuss, since we can almost guarantee that this one video here that documents the face stabber included some sort of gameplay of the weapon, giving us some closure as to how this weapon was played in the actual game. In light of this post and the video going private, I did some searching and stumbled across this thread of a user looking for the exact same video on the Knockout forums. User HugTheBed2 had entered the TF2 general mega thread on the forum on March 6th of last year, asking if anybody had downloaded the face stab knife video that was in the blog post, claiming that the change YouTube made to unlisted videos was the reason for its privatization. And this was actually correct, as the year prior to this post, YouTube had released a controversial update that changed any video that was published as unlisted to private if it had been uploaded before 2017, which definitely includes our face stab video. So this gives us the reason as to why the video was privatized, but now it proved an even bigger roadblock as the video could no longer be accessed, so searching for a potential archive or someone who had downloaded the video was the only way to go. Scrolling a small bit down into the thread, HugTheBed2 posts a video link that they claim was an audioless re-upload in quotes, featured in a commentary video by a user named Rapid, talking about the unreleased weapons. Now, this video in question was created mere days after the blog post was released, so it had to be a given that the face stab was included, and sure enough, there it was. Around the 3-minute 17-second mark, we get a cut to the official video posted by Valve. The only blunder with this find though, is that the audio was missing, since there was commentary being provided by Rapid throughout the video.
The second item that they talk about in this blog is the face stab knife. Now, what's interesting about that is, don't they already have that in the game? Isn't it called the knife? I'm pretty sure that's what it's called.
More questions arose that debated whether this clip was actually the entire video or a small portion that Rapid had cut out for convenience sake. Whatever the case, despite the full video still remaining lost, we actually had a glimpse into what the video was showing. We meet our protagonist, the Blue Spy, who appears to have just backstabbed, or face stabbed rather, a red pyro. A devilish close-up shows our spy wearing the Party Phantom, for whatever reason. He sits there, spawn camping, idly waiting for the next victim to come wandering cluelessly out of spawn. And here is where we see just how broken this weapon was in full motion, because as soon as this red innocent demo comes strolling out of the spawn room, he is met with an insta-kill from the front, a textbook definition of exactly what Valve was trying to tell us. This thing was busted. We had the video, or at least a portion of it, as an audioless clip was definitely a start. With the search eventually drawing no conclusions within the forum post, things seemed at a dead end until HugTheBed2 approached a later thread specifically about TF2 lost media, again on the Knockout forums, linking back to their initial search and asking if anyone had any leads. This is when user Maybe wrapped up the search by using a method that should have been the first thought when looking for lost media, the Wayback Machine. Maybe had provided the full video, stating that it was still possible to find archives of the privatized videos through the Wayback Machine, which is exactly what they'd done. And with this link, we can finally spot the aspects of the original video, which were initially missing. Immediately, it's evident this video was indeed only 5 seconds long, with the clip provided by Rapid in fact being the full video. Of course, the audio is present, although not providing much for the clip, other than a perfectly timed menacing lightning strike as soon as the spy's face is shown. But the point was that the video had finally been located, on a Wayback Machine archive no less, as it's never definitive that an archive would be created for a YouTube video that would eventually become inaccessible. Naturally, the video had been uploaded by the Team Fortress account 2 days before the blog post was created, and had amassed 60,000 views on the 7th of June. The search for the official face stab demonstration video was finished, but there still was a hint of lost content, as you can clearly see the actual knife itself was coded and implemented into a build of the game. So although we have the video, we don't actually have any access to the weapon. And as I stated earlier, the lack of availability to anything regarding these unreleased weapons will forever remain technically lost, In that case, we may as well try to piece together how this weapon looked and functioned in game through the only surviving evidence we have. First off, the model. I had initially thought that Valve went to the lengths of creating an entirely new model for the face stab knife. However, it's obvious right at the start of the video that the weapon simply takes the model from the kunai. The stats are evident, reversing a backstab so it triggers on the front, but it's strange how much this knife twisted the game mechanics of TF2 for a silly little spy weapon. Think about it this way. Instead of turning to face a spy with this knife, you instead have to turn away, completely messing up a player's game sense by having two entirely opposite mechanics in the same class. I would have asked just how crazy Valve were for thinking about an idea like this for TF2, but they said themselves that it wouldn't work before playtesting, so I guess this idea was just a little whimsical fun. The search for the face stab video has quite a bittersweet ending, as after all, we have gotten back the official video present on the blog post, but it shows something we're never going to see again. Who knows if Valve still have any remnant of the ideas they implemented and playtested around the start of June in 2014, but at least we have some sort of evidence as to the existence of these strange weapons. It would be wrong not to include any sort of resolve throughout this video, so the curious case of the face stab knife was definitely something to note. Overall, the video for this weapon has definitely been found and secured, but if you're thinking of the weapon itself, then it would remain partially lost for the sole fact that we have at least some testament to its existence. I'm sure that many of you have heard of Final Combat, and if you haven't, it's a blatant Chinese ripoff of TF2 that plagiarized many different mechanics, such as weapon designs, maps, and even the main classes themselves. This game has attained such a meme status within the community that Valve even greenlit an actual community-made soldier cosmetic set based off the Final Combat variant. I'm not kidding, you can wear this in-game right now. So with a game such as this, that has been so clearly copied, you'd expect it was a flop, right? Well, it's quite the opposite, as Final Combat actually performed pretty well in its country of origin, China. This is strange because you'd wonder why someone would play such a blatant rip-off of a game that they can easily just download and play themselves. But the thing is, Final Combat actually had some original unique features that set it apart from TF2. This game, although definitely plagiarized with literal stolen assets, had somewhat of its own thing going for it before ultimately succumbing to a dying player base and eventual shutdown that shocked quite a few, sending the entire game and all of its assets into the abyss of lost content. Final Combat was released on December 15th, 2011, a couple years after TF2, which honestly surprised me as this game looks like something much more recent, like some mobile ripoff, but I digress. It was developed by a studio named Pearl Digital Entertainment and published by Zunli Games. Sorry if I said that wrong, of course both being Chinese studios. The game was free to play, just like TF2, however it could only be played through online servers, requiring the user to create an account and connect it to a master server of the region they were playing in. I doubt that there were any master servers for any other country, especially Western countries, as every piece of existing media surrounding this game is explicitly Chinese, so I'd assume that the regions in question are different parts of China. The information we have of this game consists of multiple different categories, so I'll try to outline as much as possible to give you a good summary of what Final Combat actually was. There's text-based articles and wiki pages detailing summaries of the game, actual gameplay footage primarily from Chinese media sharing platforms, and official animations for the game from the publishers themselves. Final Combat is described by multiple sources as a battle between teams of opposing heroes, set in a future where a group of like-minded people, known as the Stormtroopers, once came together to protect the world, but split into two groups which are now opposed to each other. Obviously this is just some sort of on-the-spot lore to justify the two teams, so I doubt this is even expanded upon in the game. Information surrounding the playable classes in Final Combat varies, as we're told the game has 7 unique classes. However, the cover art shows 10, and some sources even clarify that there are 16 classes. But judging from the content we have, I'll go out and say that the Final Combat has a minimum of 7. Naturally, the first class to talk about would have to be the Rocket. He's the face of Final Combat, featured in just about every FC related media, and is probably the closest resemblance to an actual TF2 class in design. He's got the helmet, the coat, albeit slightly altered to look like a firefighter, and a straight up replica of the rocket launcher, with absolutely nothing changed. He obtained infamy from the YouTube video titled Meet the Rocket, which was a promotional video, of course, copied from the Meet the Team series, published shortly before Final Combat's release, where the West got a great taste of just how strange this game looked. Other classes include Fat Man, naturally the Final Combat version of Heavy, this time instead making him a Chinese fishmonger, that for some reason has an alter ego of a big machine gun wielding mercenary. Next we have Firebat, the replacement for Pyro, who takes up a clown persona and then proceeds to burn down the circus to save a cat. Pretty awesome backstory for such a cheap game, but moving on. There's Nurse, or as the trailer calls her, Medical, This time, Final Combat took the liberty of changing up the character design slightly to include female characters, which I admit is something. The trailer in question is some bizarre looking music video which has the nurse doing all sorts of moves, then initiating a Chinese Uber charge on Rocket. Striker is a strange class, almost resembling Scout but taking on a more basic mercenary assault-like character, like a merc from Open Fortress. His trailer isn't really anything special, telling me that Striker was more of a basic starter character. Sniper's name is unchanged, although their design is extremely different. This time around they've taken up the role of sexy teacher who is also a skilled marksman. Just utterly bizarre. No words here. And at last we have the Mechanism. Yes, Mechanism, being our engineer substitute. The trailer for Mechanism features no animation, just simple gameplay, with the only snippet of the character themselves being a still PNG at the end of the trailer, which, again, showcases a change in gender for yet another character. Final Combat carried on for another 7 years, albeit with an apparently dwindling player base towards the end of its life, according to some Mandarin speakers. However, it apparently sustained itself with a barrage of in-app purchases and microtransactions. Whether the classes themselves were pay to use is unknown, but to me, the contrast between a rather default character such as Striker and an eccentric character like Firebat tells me this was likely the case. Regardless, the publishers behind Final Combat, Zon Lee Games, announced that the game was to be discontinued from May 9, 2018. 2 months later, the Chinese master server ceased operations, leaving what was left of the game in limbo, unable to be played as its online-only gameplay meant no one could actually load into anything. Since practically nothing was known about the intricacies of Final Combat in the West, people had no idea this was the case until it was too late to begin efforts to archive any content. As for the people over in China, it seems as if the game was just too dead to care enough. As far as we know, the actual playable game of Final Combat has been lost to this day. Still, we have lots of gameplay to go through in order to determine what exactly we'd lost. So let's begin to unravel this mess of a game with some Chinese recordings. I've gathered a couple videos through Bilibili.com, a Shanghai-based video sharing platform that shows footage of Final Combat from its early days in 2012, right up to its eventual shutdown in early 2018. Hopefully with these videos we can get somewhat of an idea as to how this game looked and played, at least to the best of what we can see. First of all, the main menu. I can't read Chinese or Mandarin, so take my assumptions with a grain of salt. But we can see the essentials here, such as a player level or currency balance, what I think is a newsfeed or blog window, an item shop with different skins and hats, a play button or some sort of practice mode, and these buttons I have absolutely zero idea. The person recording then switches over to the inventory screen, where you can definitely see just how much this game incorporated skins in in-game purchases, as there's loads of slots here on the side, with this person in particular having quite a few items in their inventory. On the left you can spot the buttons to navigate to a different class, with there being 7 classes to customize. That's our confirmation. This says to me that any other strange looking model that appears to be an additional class is probably just a skin that heavily changes the design of a character. Nonetheless, the player chooses a server and loads into a match. The loading screen shows a brief overview of the map, as well as some sort of guide as to how to level up or obtain items. I really don't know. The UI in this game is so cluttered, making it hard to understand what the icons are trying to say, even without speaking Mandarin. Once the gameplay actually starts, we get a good look at the HUD. It's reminiscent of TF2 of course, having the ammo counter and the health bar in the bottom corners, with the scoreboard and the time limits at the top. This video in particular though, I cannot make out for the life of me what this mode is meant to be. The player loads in with a melee weapon and goes around a small arena, similar to Egypt from TF2, bashing people to death. Several different icons begin to appear on screen, which could be power-ups, debuffs, or something like a tag system. This mode is literally just melee. The entire 7-minute video consists of hand-to-hand combat. The closest thing I can think of here is a copy of medieval mode, but an actual mode to refer to completely escapes me. I cannot think of anything as to what is trying to be achieved here. Another thing, notice the characters. All of them are so customized, you genuinely cannot tell what class they are. There are cosmetics for all regions of the body, wings, hats, and even skins that completely change the model of the class. But we already established that microtransactions played a huge part in this game, so this isn't too surprising. At the end of the game, a screen appears that shows just how much in-game currency the player earned during the match, alongside 9 cards that each carry different rewards. You can tell Final Combat is heavily based on in-game purchases and transactions, through just how much it emphasizes its shop and currency system, as well as this strange menu, which shows some kind of trade-up or loot box opening process. Moving on to some actual gun gameplay, the player looks to be playing on a map similar to Harvest, with its 2-story farm buildings now turned into strange fairy tale-esque designs, all sorts of pinks, bright greens and blues. This player seems to be playing the medic, with a Crusader's crossbow-like weapon that shoots healing arrows. Nothing much really happens here. The player gets into some fights, and we can see the full extent of each class in actual gameplay. A little into the video, the player gets into an altercation with a huge mecha boss-like enemy, who fires a barrage of rockets. Whether this strange mech was controlled by a player, or was simply a boss who roams the map, kinda like the horseless headless horseman, there really is no way to tell. Our final video is a more recent recording from a player appearing to play Rocket, or Soldier, with some sort of weapon that looks nothing like a standard rocket launcher, firing rockets in a fashion very similar to TF2. At least they took the effort of actually adding an animation to whatever this thing is. Trying to discern the gameplay in Final Combat is very difficult, as there seems to be a million things happening at once on screen. All these numbers, players with infinite customization options, and a million different textures all piling onto one another. We've gone over exactly what Final Combat is, and what was actually lost when the game shut down in 2018, but how is it confirmed that the game is truly lost? Well, as clarified, the game was entirely online, meaning that without an account and a connection to the master server, you couldn't access any aspect of gameplay. This held true all the way up until its shutdown, meaning there was genuinely no way to access the game in any form, even with a downloaded copy. The website for Final Combat has since gone defunct. However, through the Wayback Machine, we can see that there was some sort of semblance of a homepage for this game throughout the years, with a flash player and a login screen as the main elements of the page. If I could read Mandarin, I definitely would go into depth analysing this page, but I'd assume that the only assets here are promotional trailers and the like. So, Final Combat. An infamous game with varying opinions on its legitimacy. Some think it's a genuine game with a charming art style, and others think it's a shameless rip-off only made to make a quick buck. Among all arguments though, the fact that this game copied TF2 is evident, so it definitely constitutes a piece of TF2 lost media in my book. Through its shutdown, many Chinese people lost a game that they actually enjoyed, with videos on social media reminiscing of good memories. With how obscure information surrounding Final Combat was over here in the West, there really was no way of telling exactly what this game was, and its shutdown was passing news. But what people push aside is the fact that this game is now lost to time, possibly forever if the server never opens back up, and the game never resumes development. And judging from just how much this game plagiarized TF2, I doubt anyone would actually get to playing it ever again. Before the official release of TF2, on the 10th of October 2007, a handful of forums were created in order to specifically discuss the upcoming game and just about any piece of media they can get their hands on pre-release. One of the most notable of these forums was a website named TotalTF2.com, an ancient forum dedicated to discussing TF2 news before people had even played the game as early as the first public beta test. People flocked to TotalTF2.com to speculate every intricate detail about the game, as well as tear apart each and every video, screenshot, and article released at the time. Of course, with discussing minimal assets available to the public, extremely long threads would be created for events such as the reveal of the HUD, stuff people knew was coming, but had not yet gotten the chance to see any of it. Some of these threads went back as early as July 2007, the same month the forum itself had been created, 3 months before TF2 saw any sort of official release. However, as most of these early threads merely discussed what they thought the game would be, a thread was created that same July on the 26th that would bring up something of interest. Apparently, according to thread creator Crazy Man, a fully fledged TV series named Elect Play, or EP, had created an episode that went over behind the scenes footage for TF2, which would pique the interest of some given actual recordings of the game were scarce this early before release. Of course, when this thread was published nearly 16 years ago, these people could easily access whatever this video was. But now, getting to this page alone through the Wayback Machine meant a long while of scouring old threads for Hunter Grassy Trams, who brought this mysterious thread to my attention. With a friend, they had gone through TotalTF2.com in search of buried content that was lost when the website shut down in early 2008, before stumbling across this very post that detailed something no one had seemingly talked about, ever. The bizarre TF2 behind the scenes video. Of course, clicking the link now through any sort of archive turns up nothing, with a notice saying Flash Player is no longer supported. What's worse, the date of the archive for this Elect Play page is dated December 24th, 2007, nowhere near the date of the initial thread back in July that gave the link in the first place. That means the date in which the supposed behind the scenes video was published to the website hadn't even been archived here, so if Flash even worked, we wouldn't actually have the correct episode. So what even is Elect Play or EP, and how does this mention of a video qualify as a TV episode? Well, the actual name for this program is The Electric Playground, a weekly show focused on documenting different things from around the video game industry, as well as other forms of media as well. It talked primarily about games, but also movies, shows, and comics. The Electric Playground was based in Canada, and had been running its weekly coverage since 1995. Nowadays, they've rebranded to Electric Playground Network, or EPN, and create videos bi-daily, or just whenever they feel like it. In 2007, when their supposed TF2 episode had been published, they were still known as just the Electric Playground, and were making videos weekly. As for the website, it's a typical example of mid-2007 website design, albeit looking a little outdated. We do know that the video was indeed hosted here, as the link in the thread leads directly to this page, so whether there was an additional information about the video within the Flash player elements is unknown. Thing is, with Electric Playground being an episodic weekly TV show at the time, this TF2 episode may have been hosted elsewhere, perhaps even being on actual television. There is no way for us to really know when Electric Playground specifically hosted an episode on multiple platforms, or just one platform, so this TF2 episode may as well just be a mini video featured in their website. But one thing remains, this episode/video Electric Playground had produced was featured here at one point, and did contain very early footage of a definitive TF2 build, so let's investigate what we know was in this video before delving deeper into the search. Since the thread itself is the only real discussion we have of this mysterious episode, we can only gather information as to what it contained from the limited replies, spanning across just 2 pages. There were quite a lot of people expressing their thanks for being alerted to the episode, so we'll skip over them and focus on the replies discussing what they saw. First, the opening post. OP provides a link, then explains very briefly that they saw something of note. A so-called map named Bridge had been changed to Gravel Pit, which we know was a map definitely featured in the release lineup. They go on to talk about how the presenters within the episode mentioned Gravel Pit having 2 points that you need to capture before the main point, which was correct, hinting at the episode revealing the 3 CP game mode to people who had not yet known of its existence. OP goes on to list the maps they speculate to be released alongside the game, getting every entry correct with the new addition of Gravel Pit, except for one map, which we knew was Granary. This meant that OP, as well as other users in the forum, knew that TF2 would be released with 6 maps, theorized that one would be named Bridge, and successfully identified Two Fort, Dust Bowl, Well and Hydro beforehand. This means that the Electric Playground video had actually confirmed, or even leaked, the release of the 3 CP game mode and the details surrounding Gravel Pit before people knew otherwise. Naturally, this adds big value to the lost episode, an actual piece of TF2 history. Going further down gives us some additional information from several different users, such as this one user talking more about the show itself and the host at the time, in addition to a mystery map that was mentioned in the episode. This reply prompted another user to point out that they saw something within the mystery map, that being a crane. The interesting thing about this is, the only other map that could have been able to be teased by that point was Granary, if we go by the fact that the majority of the forum had yet to know about the final entry among the 6 release maps. Although, looking at Granary now, the map definitely has an industrial design fit for a crane prop, but there isn't any crane in sight. Could this have been a change valve made to the map, or was the mystery map in question something entirely different that could have very well been cut from the game? The only other comment about the episode's contents within the thread talked about the heavy shotgun, abbreviating heavy to HW, or heavy weapons. The reply stated that the heavy seemed to move at quite a good pace for a fat guy, which may have signalled an oversight with heavy speed in the showcased early build, but to me this seems more likely that it was just a joke. Either way, this was the last reply that had any sort of details surrounding the episode, as all of the other replies are simply just appreciations for what Crazy Man had found. This leaves us with a small but interesting amount of information about the episode. Let's go over what we know. First of all, the main point of this Electric Playground episode was to act as a behind-the-scenes tease for TF2, showing quite a few things that users hadn't yet known about the game prior to the episode's publication. The main spectacle was the reveal of Gravel Pit and the 3 CP game mode, throwing users in the thread for a loop as to how 3 separate control points would function. As I stated, this seemed like the first introduction of this concept within all media predating TF2's release, basically serving as the reveal of the map alongside the game mode. Another thing within this episode was the mention of a mystery map, as well as a brief snippet that had enough content for a user to point out something. A crane. We know that the release maps that had not yet been teased by that point had any semblance of a crane, nor did Granary, the only map that had yet to be revealed. This leaves us in the dark as to what this map could have been, a changed version of a map within the release lineup, or even cut content. And that's all we know about this episode, with no indication as to any other details such as the video length, how exactly Electric Playground got the permission to publicise behind the scenes assets, and any other TF2 features that may have been teased. With a limited knowledge of what the episode contained, all there is to do now is search for any additional information, along with maybe a working link to the episode online. The main starting place to think of is a repository for Electric Playground episodes, and this is where it gets interesting. At the time, we knew the Electric Playground was publishing weekly episodes, but we have no indication as to whether the TF2 episode was broadcasted on television alongside an online publication. This could mean the episode was some sort of internet-only thing, making it harder to pinpoint through delving into the history of Electric Playground broadcasts. Nonetheless, an episode with a date lining up to that of the thread was found, being episode 12 of season 17, published on July 26th. Of course, there is a possibility that the thread was made late in response to the episode published a week prior, which would have been episode 11 of the same season. In any case, I'm almost certain that our episode is either of these two. Now all there is to do is search for the corresponding Electric Playground episodes. From a quick Google search on season 17, we're given a number of sites that show listings for each individual episode from that season, along with the names of hosts, writers and directors. Other websites show listings for Electric Playground episodes, but leave a big gap between Season 14 and Season 20 for seemingly no reason. It really seems as if actual archives of early Electric Playground episodes are very hard to come by, and finding this specific TF2 episode among the rest that have been lost is near impossible. The only other place to look for any actual Electric Playground media is the official YouTube channel, which does actually re-upload older episodes. Another interesting thing about the official YouTube channel is the Popular Videos tab, which shows that the network's most viewed videos follow the same format as our TF2 episode, behind the scenes showcases. Unfortunately, these popular videos are for films that released much sooner than TF2, telling me that this was during the era where Electric Playground began to take to their YouTube channel instead of their daily television segment. Of course, the main thing to do at this point is to contact the host behind this episode, the writers, the directors, anyone we could talk to without breaching their privacy in any way. The main host, Victor Lucas, who was credited for hosting the TF2 episode, is still active as the primary producer for content on the official Electric Playground channel, so he seems like the main person to contact here. Apart from that though, our leads have seemed to dry up everywhere we turn. The mystery of the Electric Playground video is by far the most mysterious entry in this video, with information surrounding the actual episode as well as any remnants of the episode itself basically missing from the internet. The only evidence we have as to the contents of episode 12 or episode 11 from season 17 are entirely contained within this one archive thread, from a long lost forum that was established before TF2 was even released as a beta. We have no screenshots, clips, or even official descriptions of the episode, so for now it remains entirely lost. If you're Canadian or American, please try to search for any sorts of Electric Playground archives if you have any, as you may just be able to uncover this mysterious episode. Thank you all so much for reaching the end of the video. Lost media has always been a topic I wanted to cover, so what better way to cover it with the deepest pieces of TF2 Lost media? I hope you all learned something new today, and I also hope that some of you may have some leads as to the topics I discussed. Perhaps with this video, some of these pieces can form a search, and even be discovered. But apart from that, I appreciate the wait for this video. It has been quite a while since the last one. I had a lot to do, college and stuff, but now I can hopefully push aside the long upload gaps. Again, thank you for watching. This has been Tofinator, and I'll see you all again very soon.